Salutations, one and all, and welcome to RWBY Revisited. This time, let's examine something critical to the series, the Relics. Please be aware that spoilers for all volumes will follow, and any material revealed or explained in supplementary material won't be weighted as heavily as that seen in the show. So before we can truly begin discussing the Relics, we have to analyze a few other details. So we know that the Relics were created by the God of Light after he and his brother eradicated humanity, but what exactly are they? Are they just a conduit for the spirit inside, or are they more? They seem to be pretty durable. Weiss even uses the staff as a weapon in Volume 8, but can they be destroyed? And if they could, would that also remove the concept that they represent? It's just speculation, but if you somehow broke, say, the Sword of Destruction, would humanity and the Faunus lose the desire to destroy or kill things and just become completely passive? If you could destroy them, would it make it so that Salem can never win? She can't gather them all if they don't exist anymore.
I can't do it! I can't make it!
This could lead to a situation where Salem might be about to collect a third relic, and Ozma may debate destroying it, sacrificing an aspect of humanity to save them. It could pose a moral quandary whether it would be worth giving up something so integral to avoid annihilation. It's not worth it, but putting characters in such a position can help force them to commit to their values. Now, they're probably indestructible, or close to it, considering they were made by God, but it is something that I've wondered for a while now. If they function as an aspect of sapience given form, then whatever happens to them could cause inconceivable havoc. Setting that aside, though, how did Ozma know where they were? If the God of Light gave him that information, we didn't see it. And judging by the fact that the world he was reincarnated into didn't have them shown in their civilizations, they seem to have been hidden. But then how did Ozma find the lamp, which gave him the location of the other relics? And how did he know how to summon Jinn? There are a lot of unanswered questions from that period of time, and we don't have much information. If he used magic to find them, then surely Salem could have done the same. And where did Ozma stash them before he had the maidens in the vaults? Salem has infinite time, magic, and Grimm, so she could simply assault anywhere Ozma is to either capture him or obtain the relics for herself. This does beg the question of why she hasn't done another atlas before now. But then we come to the vaults themselves, and they're an oddity. First off, how did they come into being? Were they made by Ozma himself? That seems like the most obvious answer, but the vaults don't really function like anything else we've seen magic do as of yet. Magic has mostly been elemental based in the show, as that's all the maidens have used. Ozma has used a few other skills, like giving the Bronwynds the ability to turn into birds, but neither he nor Salem have done anything on the scale of creating a pocket dimension, at least not that we've ever seen. Salem can conjure Grimm arms, but it's unclear as to if these are some kind of portal, or if they function as a sort of rune that spawns them. Even if that is the case, it still pales in comparison to the vaults. Are they the real reason that Ozma's magic is so limited? That would be a more concrete explanation than the maidens. I still have to question why Ozma can't take the maiden powers back if they came from him originally. The other hypothesis is that the relics existed in the vaults from the moment of their creation. That would explain why nobody had ever found them, and how Ozma got them to begin with. Salem seemed content to just sit in her cottage, and without knowing they existed, then she likely wouldn't have found them either. If the vaults were created by the God of Light, then using magic to get inside would ensure that only Ozma, and unfortunately Salem, would be able to get them, in keeping with his mission. If that's the case, though, can you just pick up a vault's door and put it somewhere else? It doesn't seem like it was there when Atlas was constructed. Imagine 4 guys just picking up a vault door and hauling it away somewhere. But how do the vaults work on the inside? If Yang had just kept walking into Haven's vault, where would she have ended up? Does that space go on forever, or does it stop somewhere? Would you just end up where you started, like it was a globe? But let's take a look at the relics themselves. The Relic of Knowledge is the first one we saw, and of the two we've seen, it's unique in that it requires saying the spirit's name to summon it. Again, we don't have confirmation on how Ozma knew this, but somehow he did. So every 100 years, Jinn can answer 3 questions. But the stipulations of these are somewhat unclear. Does each question have its own timer, or are they independent? Say if you asked one question, then waited 20 years and asked the other 2, would you get to ask another question after 80 years, or does the timer only start once the last question has been asked? Or is the century time limit tied to the time relative to when the relic was created? To clarify, say that the relic was created, and its 3-question timer starts. After 100 years, the count is refreshed. If the narrative is almost at the end of one of those centuries, then the 3 questions might be about to refresh. Again, it's just speculation, but the rules are somewhat vague. Another thing to ponder is, can Jinn still be summoned if the questions have been asked? Could you summon her to just have a chat? If you did, she likely wouldn't be bound to answering questions, and I doubt she could show you anything like how she does when using one of her 3 questions, but she might be able to interact. The second, and only other relic we've seen in the show, is the Relic of Creation. This one differs in that one doesn't need to say Ambrosius's name to summon him. He simply appears with seemingly no trigger. It isn't just touching the staff that summons him, as Penny held it without summoning him. Is he summoned by the intent of the one holding it? That seems to be the most plausible scenario, but we don't have anything concrete. The Relic of Knowledge was incredibly powerful, but the Relic of Creation has the potential to be even more potent. It can create a theoretically infinite number of things, but only one can exist at a time, and the user must provide Ambrosius with a frame of reference to work off of. So in theory, if Salem wanted to clear the way to Vacuo's vault, all she'd need to do would be to have a map of the city and tell Ambrosius that she wanted to build the city of Vacuo 100 miles away using the existing materials of Vacuo. Then poof, Vacuo is out of the picture. If the vault doesn't move with it, then it will be left exposed in the desert, completely defenseless. But there are loopholes in the staff's powers. Penny got an organic body completely free of charge. Ambrosius created a new mechanical body that had no consciousness using her existing parts, but where did her organic material come from? It just sort of appeared and then persisted after the staff was used to conjure the portals to Vacuo. Penny didn't have an organic body before, so how did this one come into being? It seems to be that Ambrosius can't destroy, and thus was required to give Penny's soul a body to avoid destroying her. That seems to be the implication anyway. If anyone has any ideas on how that worked, feel free to let me know. But the staff could likely be used in a simple way. Salem could hold Vacuo hostage with it. Cinder created something as simple as fire, so Salem could use it to create, say, a ton of rock, using a piece of an existing mountain, then have it dropped from high above Vacuo. Let it crash into the ground, dealing immense damage. Then she could declare that she'll drop the next one on Vacuo unless the Summer Maiden submits herself. Either way, she wins. If the Summer Maiden gives up, then Cinder will gain the ability to open the vault, and if she doesn't, then she just drops a mountain on the city, and then her Grimm can dig a path to the vault. In the hands of Salem, the Staff of Creation should realistically be an I win button. She doesn't have to worry about collateral damage or preserving civilization. Unless there are some other circumstances or stipulations with the staff that we don't know about, this thing is incredibly OP. But a point I've raised before is what stops someone from acting while a relic pauses time. With both relics we've seen, using them causes time to pause while the user activates the relic. Why didn't Cinder kill Winter and steal the Winter Maiden powers once she got her hands on the staff. So far, there's been no explicit rule stating or showing that someone can't do this. That ability alone would make the relics more powerful than any magic or monster that Salem could think up. Most likely, there's something that prevents the user from interacting with the world while they use a relic, but it would be nice to see someone try. So now we come to the other half of the 4 relics, the 2 that haven't been seen in the show proper, and as such, all of the information on them comes from outside sources. Because of that, I'm going to be taking their descriptions with a grain of salt, as these are not as strong of a canonical source as the main show. We know that the Relic of Destruction takes the form of a sword and is inside Vacuo's vault. That's everything concrete we have on it. But it likely has its own rules that govern how it functions, just like the relics of knowledge and creation. One route might be that the sword could destroy a given target, but it would also need a sacrifice from its wielder to do so. Imagine if it took the user's life to destroy what they wanted, or the life of someone they care about. That would make it so that morally good individuals wouldn't use it unless it was their utmost need, but more evil-inclined individuals wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice others to get what they wanted. If it took the wielder's own life, then it could possibly allow one of the main cast to completely obliterate a huge chunk of Salem's forces, maybe even her whole domain at the cost of themselves. That would certainly be interesting. Another caveat that could be intriguing would be if the sword's power was extremely difficult to control. While the Relic of Creation is very precise, the Relic of Destruction might be just as unstable. It might just obliterate anything in the area of its target instead of only what the user wants. That would help factor into the opposing sides of the relics. While the Staff of Creation might be like pouring water into a funnel, the Sword of Destruction could be like dumping out a bucket, hitting anything in a general direction. But the sword likely has a spirit inside it as well, seeing as the other 2 did. The spirits don't seem to be able to deny someone using them, except in the case of Jin being out of questions, but I imagine that the spirit inside the sword would want to be used. This spirit would be opposed to Ambrosius. While he was methodical and calculating, wanting very specific details before he did anything.
Details.
What if the spirit of the sword just wanted to smash things and people for fun? The spirit could be like a corrupting influence, urging whoever carries it to use its power.
Do it.
Finally, we come to the Crown of Choice. This one is more enigmatic than the others, and as such has more mystery to it. Despite having her Grimm crawling all over Beacon, Salem states that her forces can't locate the relic. Shouldn't she mean the vault? It's impossible to get into the vaults to get the relic without the appropriate maiden, and we haven't seen Cinder picking through the school to find it. With certain Grimm having the ability to dig and tunnel, they should have uncovered the vault's entrance by now. This would mean that there either is no vault in Beacon, or that it's somewhere else, and that Beacon was a ruse. I remember running a D&D campaign, and I came up with Ozma having created an underwater facility with Atlas tech that housed the vault, but that's just a fun idea I came up with. Moving aside from that, this would mean that if the vault isn't in Beacon, it could potentially be anywhere. Some theorize that it's somewhere on Patch, and that's why Taiyang won't leave it, but that is only speculation. While I can see why some people ascribe to that theory, the little we've seen of Taiyang doesn't seem to fit with that, as he looks the most out of the loop of his former team. So it could be anywhere. When Volume 9 dropped, I thought that maybe Ozma might have found a way to store it here instead of Beacon, and that would have even factored into how Alex ended up here, but no. We got nothing on that front. Its power is stated to be the ability to show the wearer a choice that they will need to make in the future. This opens up a nasty can of worms. If they will have to make this certain choice, then that path has to be fixed, and that means that the future is at least partially set in stone. That means that destiny or fate is at play, at least to some extent. And if destiny exists, then free will can't. Let me explain. If an outside force like fate controls the flow of events to lead to an outcome, then the people that are controlled by it can't do anything outside of what it wants. Their free will can't exist if a particular future is already put in place. That would mean that anyone who is good or evil is that way not out of their own choices, but because the universe made them that way. If the relic shows them a choice in the future that can't be avoided, then by extension, the denizens of Remnant can't have free will. But this would run counter to the God of Light's statement that humans have the ability to choose. But okay, maybe it just shows something more nebulous and not something that is predetermined. Fair enough, but a vague choice isn't likely to help the user. I can only imagine that this relic helps clarify the immediate ramifications and possibilities of a choice that they are about to make. While choice and knowledge aren't opposing forces like creation and destruction are, I can see the spirit of this relic acting in an opposing manner to Jinn. While she was sassy and often went into great detail, this spirit might be blunt, stoic, and not divulge anything beyond the immediate aspect of the choice it's presenting. Imagine if you were stuck in a scenario with no good option, and you put on the Relic of Choice to help you make up your mind. The spirit might give you only the cold hard facts about what would happen right after you make the choice, but not anything else. I could see one of the main cast using it for this purpose, only to be angered by the spirit not giving them more information. But the other two relics we've seen have had drawbacks to using them, so unless this one is special, it likely does as well. This one might not be as obvious as the others. Its drawback might be that it doesn't give you all the information related to the choice you see, and thus you might not make the right decision. You might only know a few details, and that might cause you to choose something that you wouldn't have otherwise. So the better option might be to not use it at all. After everything that's happened with the other kingdoms, what if the cast used the relic to try and make a better decision, only for it to show them a version of events that's skewed because it can't show them everything like Jinn can? That might lead them to making a decision that helps in the short term, but is worse in the long run. Or maybe they decide to go with a plan that might help in the long run, but other events happen that make everything go awry. But ultimately, almost everything surrounding the final pair of relics is speculation and theory. Until we see them in action in the show, we can't say anything for certain. But we do know that if they're brought together, then the gods will be summoned back to Remnant. So is just all of them being in proximity enough, or is there more to it? And what defines together? If all of them were possessed by the same faction, would that be enough? Ozma might have had them all at one point, but if they were placed in the vaults of the various and sometimes warring kingdoms, then they might not fit the bill. Likely the bringing them together means physical proximity, but wordplay from deities can't be so easily discounted. And these two aren't exactly the most upstanding of individuals. They're essentially children with immeasurable power. The gods essentially created an unwinnable scenario for humanity. As long as free will exists, an entire species can't be completely 100% united. The hard truth is that you can only create the highest quality of life for the highest number of people, and there will always be those who are among the have-nots. That leads to dissension, and thus unity is lost. Unless the gods are summoned by their tree mom for a scolding, their return ensures that humanity and the Faunus are done for. Honestly, the only way to ensure that Salem never wins would be to send a massive force to steal the Relic of Creation, and then have someone sacrifice themselves to take it to Ever After, and then just live out the rest of their life there. Not even Salem could get it there, and thus she could never truly win, leaving Remnant in a perpetual stalemate. Unfortunately, our information on the relics is spotty, so much of this is speculation. But what do you think about the relics? How do the Sword of Destruction and the Crown of Choice work? And where is Beacon's relic? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this video entertaining or informative, leave a like if you're so inclined, and subscribe to see more. And may you all have a weapon in each hand.